Sorry for this post being a little bit late. Everything that has transpired since then has had my mind up in a whirl, and I don't know if I'm in the right state of mind anymore to continue doing this. And also, this all happened in the span of 2 days, and I don't know how to explain it correctly. This is going to be another long post, another apology in advance. Right after I discovered my son murdered our cat ruthlessly and looked into his eyes, I started walking backwards out of his room in fear, nearly tripping backwards multiple times. I closed his room door and I held my back against it and started trying to think, what the actual fuck do I do? As I was trying to think of logical situations to do in this kind of scenario, Ethan started slamming his entire body into the door, trying to break it down, and it completely caught me off guard. Ethan was quite a small kid, and these bangs were hard, as if someone was throwing a bowling ball the size of Godzilla into the door. It was scary, because I knew then something was definitely wrong with my son. I could confirm it at that very moment. I was trying not to step away from that door at all, just keeping myself pressed against it, praying that Ethan wouldn't break it down and try to kill me as well. I know he's just a kid and I can easily overpower him, but he's my son. I've never placed my hands on him to do something violent. After what seemed like hours, he finally stopped. After what seemed like hours, he finally stopped trying to break down the door and heard him drop the knife to the floor and let himself fall into the mattress of his bed. I put my hand on my chest and calmed my breathing. I looked at the door and saw it had very nearly broke down. No surprise, because multiple times I could hear the wood in the door snapping. I opened the door to his room slightly and saw Ethan was passed out on his bed, unconscious, his head not even on his pillow. Then I saw Ziggy. Oh, that poor cat. I didn't leave her there. I picked her up despite about the gallon of blood spilling onto my hands as I picked her lifeless body and saw even more blood on the bed that she must have been laying on that I couldn't see before. I took time to clean the blood off of her fur, doing it gently as if she was still alive, even though I knew it didn't matter if I did it rough. I then brought her body outside and buried her in our backyard, giving her a proper resting space, trying not to cry the whole time, deciding to contain my emotions until I got inside and got done with my task as I shoveled dirt onto her corpse. That's what I did. I think I cried all the way up until the creak of dawn. I wasn't just crying because my cat was dead. I was also crying because I knew my son was her murderer. I wasn't going to let him go to school today. I got up once I saw it was 7 a.m. on the clock, then brought myself to walk closer to his room and sat out there until he woke up shortly after. I walked into his room, flicked his light on as he rubbed his eyes. I grabbed his arm and started dragging him out of his room. Dad? Why are you so sad? What happened? He asked me, saying this in a way like nothing happened. I put my sandals on and put flip-flops on his feet, swung the door open and brought him out the house and slammed the door closed. Ethan was still looking at me, confused. Dad? I need to get dressed and get my backpack for school, Ethan says, almost exclaiming. That was when I lost my cool. I had to let it out. You know dang well what you did. You got up, grabbed a knife from the kitchen, and murdered our cat in cold blood. You even tried attacking me. Mister, you're not going to school today. We're going to go get you help. I yelled, veins forming in my neck and face. Ethan started to cry, and I immediately felt bad for yelling at him. But I meant everything I said. Dick move. I know. What do you mean? I didn't get up. He cries. That's when he stopped crying for a split second, a look of realization forming on his face. Wait, Ziggy's dead? Ethan says in a high-pitched yell. Yes, she's dead. Now get in the car, I say as I put him in the back seat, close the door, and get in the driver's seat. I looked in the rearview mirror at myself. I had dark bags under my eyes, my hair a mess, my goatee being the only thing on my face that remained the same. I started to drive as Ethan started wailing in the back seat about Ziggy. Why would he be crying? I thought. He's the one who killed the fucking cat. I drove a 15-minute route to a therapist. I booked an appointment on my phone a few hours earlier while I was grieving over Ziggy. As I pull in, I notice it's a pretty small building with very little windows except for at the entrance. I got out and got Ethan out of the car, walked in and saw not too many people in there. As I walked Ethan into the office, he didn't seem to understand what was happening as he continued wailing. The therapist came out of her room and greeted me as I walked in, and we shook hands. He was a bit of a stubby man, around my height, toupee haircut, glasses, and a really nice brown suit and tie. Hello, you're the father of Ethan, correct? He says. I nod my head. Correct, I say. He flashes a smile. I'm Dr. Jack, by the way. He looks down at Ethan, just now noticing his wails. He suddenly turns stone-faced. He looks back up at me. What happened? He whispered to me. Look, I don't really want to explain it. Basically, Ethan keeps getting up in the middle of the night and just staring out of his bedroom window. And a few hours ago, he killed our cat. I struggled to get through that last sentence, and I looked down and scratched the back of my head afterwards. Oh my God, Dr. Jack says to me. He places a hand on my shoulder. I'll make sure we have a very effective session today. Are you going to stay out here and wait for Ethan to be done? I'm about to answer before I remember something someone commented on my last post. They had said that maybe just maybe a demon was using Ethan as a parasite. I stopped cold while I'm answering Dr. Jack. I had to talk to the detective. I had to see if this is what he was going to tell me the other night. I was motionless for about a few seconds while having this thought, and when I finally regained my train of thought, I stumbled through words for a few seconds before I was finally able to say, "Actually, I need to go talk to someone for a little bit, but I'll try to be here when you're finished." "Oh, alright," Dr. Jack replies. "He should be done in about an hour or less, hopefully." "Perfect," I say, starting to jog out the building. Ethan starts to call out, "Dad, don't do this," to me, but it soon cut out as Dr. Jack started to talk softly to Ethan as he walked him into the therapy room and closed the door. I hopped in my car, started up as fast as I could, and started to drive all the way over to the sheriff's house. I needed answers. It only took me about 10-ish minutes to finally pull in. I got out of my car and ran to the glass doors and pushed them open. The lobby was full of people and my heart started to sink. I didn't have time to wait. If these people were also here to talk to him, I'm sure they were also urgent. But I needed to find out what the detective was going to tell me at my house yesterday. Luckily, I saw the sheriff walked close to the lobby to refill his coffee, and we locked eyes. His face turned from basically normal to his eyebrows widening, like he wasn't expecting me to show up. He set his coffee down and walked up to me, shaking my hand. "Hey there, is there anything we need to talk about regarding your son?" he asked me in the middle of the lobby. "Kind of, but I also need to know what you were going to say to me yesterday. The situation is getting worse, man. Please." He gritted his teeth and looked at me for a few seconds, thinking. He finally sighed and motioned for me to follow him. I followed him, not saying anything, and walked into his office. We sat across from each other. I surveyed his office, general cop stuff. His desk was full of sports junk and a couple of photos of his family. He then tapped his pen on the table. "So, what's going on with your son?" he asked, leaning a bit against the table. I took a deep breath and struggled to find words. "Well, he made more drawings, just like the one I showed you yesterday. He made 6 more to be exact," I told him. "Mm-hmm. Do you have them with you right now?" he asked. I shook my head and said no. He looked at his pen for a moment before looking back up at me and asking if that was all that happened with me. I dreaded having to tell him this next part. "I wish," I said, letting out a nervous chuckle. I looked at the sheriff, dead in the eyes. "A few hours ago, during the middle of the night, I woke up, and I found out my son had killed our cat. After I told him, he dropped his pen to the floor and let out a look of anguish and sympathy. "Holy shit," he murmured. "I'm so sorry to hear that. Where's Ethan right now?" the sheriff asked, trying to fix his face. He's at the therapist right now. I wanted to get him checked, but I decided to come over here because I remembered yesterday. What was there that you were going to tell me? You met my luck, and I could tell by the look on his face that he didn't want to tell me. And I prayed that he would tell me. It had to have been important. Listen, I don't think you'll want to hear it. He starts to reply. My son is going through something, and I am too. I don't know what the fuck is going on, and what you were going to say must have been something that I need to know. So spit it out, Sheriff. I slammed my hand on his desk and he cleared his throat. Fine. It's a lot to go through. Don't overreact. Please. He says, adjusting his seating position. I fully listen now. When you were buying your house, there was something the sellers of the house were supposed to tell you by law, but I guess they didn't obey. And I'm pretty sure they left the town, but basically, your house is haunted by demons. My blood runs cold. I start to feel multiple emotions, and I could feel my eyes twitching. I stare at the sheriff dead in the eyes. And you didn't want to tell me? I raise my voice a tad. I know. I should have told you. But I hesitated, and I wasn't sure if right then was the time. I'm sorry. You're telling me my entire house is haunted? I don't hold back as I exclaimed. The sheriff motions me to calm down. No. Well, yes, but the demons that are in your house only stay in one part of the house. I felt myself start to shiver. What part of the house are the demons at? I softly ask. Sheriff waits a moment before answering. Your son's bedroom window. That's where they all stay. I slammed my head on the desk and wrapped my arms around my face and started breaking down. There were demons in my son's room. I just couldn't hold it in. I wasn't afraid to let the sheriff see me like this. The sheriff waits for me to stop crying, and I do it for a couple of minutes before recollecting myself. I run my arm across my nose before asking another question. Why are the demons in my son's room? In his window? Why? The sheriff shrugs. I don't know. I'm not an expert on this stuff. Based on the stuff I do know, though, is that the demons in your house have a fixation on the window. And anyone who stands a few feet away from it, and an inch away from the end of the left side, start to see things. Really disturbing things. And a lot of the times, visions of the future. A future the demons are creating for whoever stares into the window. And when it's midnight, one of the demons calls out to you while you're sleeping, and it wakes you up and lures you to the window. Though, I don't know why that happens. After seeing the visions, a demon takes over your mind and controls you to do it. Whether it's 1 minute later or a whole day later. And over time, if it happens enough, a demon will possess its entire body. So the bottom line is, when your son ran away, when he killed your cat, that wasn't your son. That was a demon controlling his mind. The demons are targeting your son, and as long as he stares into the window, they will control his mind to kill everyone close to you and him, and eventually kill you too. The first night it happened, I don't know the full answer, but I think the demons, after 1 year, decided to stop waiting and call out to your son and get him to stand in front of the window. Thus, the voice he mentioned yesterday. It's never happened to anyone on this caliber because everyone stayed the fuck away. It could get worse anytime. All of that. Everything he said. It was a ton to take in all at once. And I felt terrible for thinking Ethan did it all. I started running through scenarios in my head of how to fix this, to give me hope. What if I just sell the house and move somewhere else? I asked, hoping that was the solution. The sheriff shakes his head. It's too late now. The demons already have a fixation on your son. They won't let you leave, the sheriff says apologetically. What if I just smash and break the window? I say, snapping my fingers as I did. Again, the sheriff shakes his head. No, never do that. If you do that, the demons will get pissed off and make your life a bigger living hell than they are already trying to do. Damn it, I thought. Well, is there any solution? I desperately asked the sheriff. Luckily, he nods his head. Yes, there fortunately is. Your son has stared into the window one too many times, so he's going to hear the demons in the house and do it no matter what now. Luckily, I have a friend that's a priest, so I could try to get him to go over to your house if it gets any worse and bless the entire house. I smile. That sounds great, but I'm worried about my son. Do you think he'll be okay? I cross my fingers underneath the desk. The sheriff slightly nods his head. For the meantime, yes. He'll be mentally okay for a while, and he'll always be physically okay. Unless something sets the demons off. However, if he continues staring into the window and listening to the demons, it can destroy his mind and he'll lose his sanity, which is the demon's goal. He hands me a card with his number and tells me to call him if I need the priest for a blessing of the house. I thanked him for everything, then walked out of the office and back to my car. I sat in my car for a while processing everything I had just found out. My house was infested by demons trying to take control of my son so he could kill people and turn them insane. Definitely not worrying at all. There was a lot he said that I didn't understand, and quite frankly, don't ever want to understand. I looked at my phone after what seemed like only being a few minutes, and it ended up actually being 10 minutes that I was sitting in my car. Ethan's therapy session ended in just a few minutes. I was getting ready to apologize to Ethan once I got him. No, I wouldn't explain this whole demon situation to him because, well, he's only 8 years old. I sped all the way to the therapist, a couple minutes late, unfortunately, and when I walked in, Dr. Jack was waiting for me with Ethan. Ethan looked fine and pretty joyful. He was happy to see me and hugged me. I hugged him back quite tightly, and after the whole talk I had with the sheriff, I told Dr. Jack thank you, paid him, and prepared to walk out the door before Dr. Jack stopped me. The therapy session went pretty good, and I recorded the audio because my boss requires me to, and I think you should have the file because I think you need to hear the whole thing. Dr. Jack pulls up the MP3 file, and I could tell by the look on his face that it couldn't have been good. Okay. I reply as Dr. Jack texts the file to me. I look back at him, thanked him again as I exit the building, and I get Ethan back in the car, and I start to drive home. I play Ethan's favorite song, Shivers by Ed Sheeran. Not a big fan of it, but the little guy loves it, as he sings along to it, but he stops his singing near the end of the song, and as Ethan apologizes to me, saying he was sorry for whatever he did, I shook my head at him and told him that I was wrong, hesitated for a moment, and said that it wasn't his fault. Then whose fault was it? Ethan says as the song ends. I close my eyes as I continue driving, thinking of an excuse to tell him. Ziggy died of old age, Ethan. Nobody did it. I lie. But Ziggy was only 6 years old, Ethan points out. I knew that it was a terrible lie on my part. I know. I didn't know what else to say. After a while of driving, I finally pull into our neighborhood and pull into our driveway. Ethan asked if he had to go to school, and I said it was too late, and he seemed really excited. I laughed at his excitement as I unlocked the door and let him run inside. Later, I let Ethan watch cartoons in the living room. SpongeBob was on, I think. I walked into my room and closed the door and opened the message Dr. Jack had sent me. And sure enough, it was an MP3 file of his therapy session with Ethan. It was about 45 minutes long, so I'm not going to recite the whole thing on here. But one part in it did stand out to me. It really did disturb me after hearing it, especially after knowing everything the sheriff had told me. I still keep shivering at the knowledge of there being literal demons in the house, even as I type this. Anyways, here's how this part of the therapy session went. I'll try to remember it as well as I can. Ethan and Dr. Jack, therapy session number 1. 7:17 a.m. Dr. Jack. Moving on now, Ethan. Your father told me how you've been standing in front of your bedroom window. Is this true? Ethan. No, that's not true. Dr. Jack. Don't lie to me, Ethan. You can tell me the truth. Ethan. Fine. I keep hearing a voice coming from the window, and it keeps telling me to come here, and it keeps telling me where to stand, and when I do it right, I hear all kinds of whispers and images flash in my head. Dr. Jack. What kinds of images, Ethan? Ethan. I don't remember, but the last one I saw was of me walking into my kitchen, grabbing a knife, walked back into my room, and cut my cat Ziggy open. Dr. Jack. Did you do it? Ethan. I don't think so. Dr. Jack. And who's the voice you're referring to, Ethan? Ethan. It said that he wanted to be friends with me. He told me the whole world is a fucking bitch and everyone should die painfully. Dr. Jack. Ethan, who told you to use that kind of language? Ethan. I was just reciting what he said. I was at a loss of words. Mainly the fact that this demon had been talking to my son. I didn't appreciate the fact that this demon was attempting to get friendly with my son. And I decided that tonight, Ethan was sleeping in my room tonight. It was not safe for him to be going back to the window. I also didn't condone Ethan's swearing, but I forgave him in my head this one time. Nighttime came by pretty quickly. Ethan got in his pajamas and was about to get in his bed when I told him he was going to sleep in my bed tonight. Why? Ethan asks as he puts his bedsheet over himself. Because if you do, I'll let you have donuts for breakfast tomorrow. I smile at him. Ethan's face lights up like a child on Christmas Day. Heck yeah, donuts! Ethan says, jumping out of his bed and running into my room to jump on the bed. I start laughing. I take one last glance at the window, sneered at it, knowing the demons were swarming it or something, and walked out of the room. The night, for the first time, was actually normal. Ethan never got to a window. I did wake up in the middle of the night and saw Ethan start to walk out of my room towards his. I got up and picked him up and brought him back into my bed. I held him close as I fell back to sleep to avoid him getting up again to go to his window. I was more cautious now. The next morning, I gave Ethan donuts for breakfast, as promised, and got him ready for school. Because I figured today, Ethan should go to school. It would give me time to have the day to think everything through about the worry of having to take care of an 8-year-old. I packed Ethan's lunch and slid it into his backpack as he got it on ready to walk to his bus stop. I kissed him on the forehead and told him to have a good day. He said, "You too," then started to try and run towards his bus stop, acting like he was going to miss the bus, even though it was only 8 o'clock and The bus didn't pick him up until about 8:12. I went back to my room after I closed the front door and retrieved the sheriff's card from my nightstand. I needed the priest to come here and bless the house today. I wasn't going to wait until something else bad happened, because I needed this issue solved now. Ethan already tried going back into his room to go back to the window last night. I dialed the number into my phone and put it up to my ear. The phone rang about 3 times before the sheriff picked up, and I told him I needed his priest friend to come and bless the house today. He asked me if something had happened, and I told him not since Ethan killed the cat, but last night he got up and tried going to the window. The sheriff agreed that we needed the priest to solve this issue, and he said that he'd call him and try to get him to come over to my house and bless the entire place, and he'd text me if he got an answer. I thanked him and hung up and sat on my bed for a minute, smiling and patting myself on the back for being able to hopefully get this issue solved. The next thing I did, only a few seconds later, was embarrassingly stupid. I suddenly felt the surge in my stomach to go to Ethan's bedroom window. I wanted to see for myself what exactly Ethan was seeing every single time he stood in front of it. I knew deep down it was a terrible idea, but curiosity got the better of me. I looked at Ethan's room through his open door, put my phone in my pocket, and started walking from my room to inside Ethan's room. I looked at nothing else besides his window, focused on my question I wanted to figure out. I got past every toy in his room without stepping on them, surprising me because they were scattered around everywhere as if they were bodies on a battlefield. I got to the window and remembered the exact spot the sheriff told me it needed to be in. I took a few steps back and got myself 1 inch away from the left side and looked at the window. Everything happened quickly in the span of only 1 second. I'll try my best to write it all out from memory. I'm not sure I'll be able to go without it being confusing. I'm not sure I'll be able to without it being confusing. My vision suddenly turned a mixture of gray and red, sort of foggy, as reality felt like it was fading away. Like it was a Google slide transition, and eventually my vision turned entirely blank as I started to hear a mixture of whispers, all seeming like they were trying to speak to me at once, but they weren't taking turns. All their voices were different, but they all also sounded the same in a way. They all had an aggressive monotone to their voices, and all of them had a huge echo to them. I couldn't make out everything all the voices were saying, but I could tell 2 things a couple of them were saying. Your son is ours, and you will never escape us. I could feel my head start to turn numb. My brain started to crumble. These voices were getting unbearable. It felt like they were going to try to kill me right then and there by destroying my head. I couldn't move away though. I was frozen stiff. I had made a terrible mistake, but I was unable to think. The images I was seeing then started to turn into visions, and I started seeing one begin. And with the foggy sight I had, as this was going on in front of my eyes, or head, still don't know how this was happening. I could distinguish myself laying down in my bed, asleep, and Ethan standing over me at the side of the bed, raising something in his hand that I couldn't quite tell. And before it could all play out, I felt my phone vibrate in my pocket, which caused my body to shake a little bit, and my head jerked around and I snapped out of the phase I was just in. I collapsed on my son's bed, and I started cursing at myself for deciding to do something like that. And I was horrified knowing my son kept having to deal with that every single time he was lured towards the window. Still, a little shaken up, I reached for my phone in my pocket, turned it on, and saw that I had got a text message from the sheriff saying that the priest had agreed and said that he would be on his way immediately to bless my house. I texted back, thanking the sheriff again, and I finally felt safe, knowing that the priest would make my life so much better, and turn it from literal hell back to peaceful. The priest showed up about 5 minutes later, and he introduced himself as Father Sam. He was a really cool guy, and he was really, and I mean really, polite. He took his shoes off when he walked in, shook my hand, and even wiped off the cloak he was wearing before he walked inside. He had a fuzzy beard and nearly bald. I won't bore you with what I discussed with him, as I basically just told him my situation with Ethan, the window, and what I just did not too long ago when I stood in front of the window. I was still pissed off at myself for doing that, and when I told him this, Father Sam shook his head at me and told me that it was remarkably dangerous of me to do such a thing. He started to bring holy water as he walked down the hallway to our rooms, and I asked him if he was going to sprinkle it all over the house. He said no, and that Ethan's bedroom window was the only thing we should bless, because the demons left the rest of the house alone. As we walked into Ethan's room, I could see Father Sam smile as he complimented the room, and I was heartwarmed and told him how fascinated he was with superheroes. I then cut to more questions I had. Before you do your blessing, what do the demon want with my son's body and mind? I say as Father Sam looked at me with graceful eyes. These demons that you and your mutual share of friends speak of, based on my studies in the past, these kinds of demons are looking for a body to take advantage of. Take over their mind and eliminate those close to them. And after a while of doing this successfully, they possess the body and very little can be done about it. Sometimes the body can get possessed if the demon gets angry enough, Father Sam explains. But what about my son's bedroom window attracts the demons? What drove them there in the first place? I almost cry out. Father Sam clicks his tongue, thinking for a while, then shakes his head. I am afraid I don't know. When this house was first built, the demons just felt something about it and took over it. This house has existed for nearly a century. I don't know exactly what about the window the demons find so interesting. I nod my head and ask him if he's sure the holy water will work. He said that it will either drive the demons away for good, or make them even more mad and do despicable things to both me and my son. Father Sam then steps to the window, avoiding stepping in the spot, and starts sprinkling the holy water all over the window, and a little on the carpet in front of him. Once he gets done, he mumbles a prayer I can't hear and steps away from the window and smiles. The window is blessed, so the demons should hopefully be gone. He then gives me a look. But if the demons are still present, give me a call immediately. I nod my head and cross my arms. Yeah, I sure will. Thanks for the help. Thanks for your help, I say as he starts walking to the door. Before he leaves, he yells out, "May God be with your soul," and closes the door. Some time passed and everything seemed normal. Ethan came home from school, did his homework. I cooked us dinner and we played a quick game. I beat him both times, but I said that he beat me instead so I could make him happy before he went to bed. I had Ethan sleep in my room again tonight, because even though Father Sam had blessed that window, I wanted Ethan in my room just in case. I didn't hug him close to me like last time when he got up, but I did make sure he was close enough to me. We went to sleep pretty easily, luckily. 4 a.m. I woke up to the sound of quiet talking. I couldn't tell from where at first. I opened my eyes and saw that Ethan wasn't in the bed, let alone the room. My heart dropped as I heard Ethan's distant, faint talking from his room. Fuck. Before I could get up, I heard the sound of Ethan screaming in pain. I immediately shot up from bed and sprinted into his room. Ethan was standing in front of the window as he screamed, but he wasn't moving. Fuck this shit, I thought, and shook Ethan and turned him towards me to break the phase he was in. He immediately sat on his bed, gripping his chest. I was worried sick. Ethan, what happened? I say quickly. I could see blood on his chest from the inside of his pajama shirt. Ethan continued crying, but he was able to choke up the words. He hurt me, he cried. I automatically knew who he was referring to. Those goddamn fucking demons haunting me and my son. Who hurt you? I say. I pull Ethan's shirt collar down and see a deep cut in his chest. Not deep enough to kill him or severely hurt him in the long run, but definitely enough to send him to the emergency room to get checked out. He looked at me teary-eyed. It told me to get a knife and kill you, it wanted me to cut your throat, but I told him I wasn't going to do that. And he yelled at me and started scratching my chest and said he was going to rip my heart out. Dad, I'm scared. I picked Ethan up and ran downstairs, not responding, preparing to get him a wet towel to heal his wound and get him to a hospital. Doing all of this with one thing in my head. The holy water didn't work. All it did was make the demons even more pissed off. Hey everybody, thank you for tuning in to another video. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and share, and I'll see you next time.